Pushpin disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created purely for entertainment purposes. It does not depict real people, events, or situations. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to actual events, is purely coincidental. The story contains mature emotional themes such as love, betrayal, and relationships, but it does not promote or encourage infidelity. Instead, it seeks to reflect on human emotions, life choices, and the consequences of broken trust. Viewer discretion is advised, as the story is intended for a mature audience. From the earliest days of her childhood, Sarah believed she had found the sister she never had in Emily. They met on the very first day of kindergarten, two shy little girls clutching their backpacks, and from that moment, they became inseparable. Their bond was not the fleeting kind that fades after adolescence. Instead, it deepened with every passing year. They shared secrets whispered late at night during sleepovers, celebrated birthdays together, and cried on each other's shoulders after heartbreaks. When Sarah married years later, Emily stood proudly by her side as her maid of honor, beaming as though the wedding were her own. Sarah often thought of Emily as family. There were no lines of separation between them, no need to guard words or emotions. Emily knew her favorite songs, her guilty pleasures, even her worst fears. For Sarah, this friendship was a safe haven, something unshakable and eternal. She often said, "If my husband is my home, then Emily is my backbone." It was a sentiment that showed just how deeply intertwined her love for her best friend was with her sense of self. Even after Sarah married David, her friendship with Emily did not waver. In fact, David welcomed Emily warmly into their married life. The three of them would often share dinners, play board games late into the night, and even plan vacations together. Sarah was proud that her best friend and her husband got along so well. It seemed like a blessing, the perfect merging of the two people she loved most in the world. She often thanked God for such fortune, convinced that nothing could ever shake this balance. The bond between Sarah and Emily extended beyond ordinary friendship. When Sarah struggled with work stress, Emily was there to cheer her up with ice cream and late-night movies. When Emily had relationship troubles, Sarah and David both gave her advice, almost like older siblings looking out for her. David, in particular, was patient and kind, often listening to Emily's frustrations long after Sarah had gone to bed. Sarah thought nothing of it. To her, it was proof of how good a man David was, caring not only for her but for the people important to her. Life seemed picture-perfect. Sarah would often catch herself thinking how rare it was to have both a loyal husband and a lifelong best friend who blended so effortlessly into their lives. Emily was not just a visitor. She was practically a fixture in their household. Neighbors even joked about how the couple had a third wheel. But to Sarah, it was endearing, even comforting. She couldn't imagine life without Emily's laughter echoing in her home or David's warm smile at her side. Little did she know, beneath the surface of all this closeness lay the first cracks that would later shatter her world. At that moment, however, Sarah was blissfully unaware. To her, life was beautiful and complete, anchored by her husband's love and her best friend's loyalty. She had no reason to doubt either. After all, who would ever question the two people they trusted most? Sarah often described her love story with David as something straight out of a romantic novel. They met in college. She was an English major who spent her days in libraries, while he was the charismatic business student who seemed to know everyone. Their worlds collided during a group project, and what started as casual conversations soon bloomed into late-night coffee dates, shared study sessions, and eventually, long walks across campus under the glow of streetlights. By the time they graduated, Sarah knew David wasn't just another chapter in her life. He was the story she wanted to write forever. Their marriage was a reflection of that devotion. In the early years, every moment felt like an adventure. They cooked together, explored new restaurants on weekends, and traveled whenever they could. Even mundane routines felt special. David kissing her forehead before leaving for work, Sarah brewing his favorite coffee every morning. These small, steady rituals created a love that felt unshakable. Emily was often a part of those rituals. Sarah, believing that her best friend deserved the same happiness she had found, made sure Emily was included in their lives. Emily joined them on Sunday brunches, sat on the couch during movie nights, and even tagged along on their annual beach trips. While some wives might have guarded their time with their husbands, Sarah never saw Emily as a threat. To her, Emily was a sister, and sisters belonged at the heart of everything. David, for his part, seemed to embrace this closeness with ease. He was attentive to Sarah and respectful toward Emily. He listened when Sarah recounted silly memories from her and Emily's childhood, laughing at their inside jokes even when he didn't fully understand them. He often teased the two of them, calling them partners in crime, and Sarah adored how effortlessly the three of them blended together. It felt like her marriage was not only strong but generous enough to share its happiness with those she loved most. For Sarah, love with David wasn't just about passion, it was about trust. He had proven himself time and again, standing by her when she lost her father, encouraging her when she doubted herself, and celebrating every little achievement with pride. She believed with all her heart that David was not just her husband, but her anchor, her safe place in a chaotic world. There were times she even told Emily, "You'll know when you've found the right one, because he'll make you feel the way David makes me feel." She said it with conviction, certain that her marriage was proof that true love did exist. Emily would smile, nodding softly, her eyes holding an unreadable expression that Sarah never questioned. Looking back, Sarah would remember these years as the golden days, the calm before the storm. She thought she had built her life on unshakable foundations: love, loyalty, and friendship. What she didn't realize was that even the strongest walls can hide cracks, invisible until it's too late. At that moment, though, Sarah was living her dream. A husband who adored her, a best friend who never left her side. What more could a woman ask for? It happened so gradually that Sarah barely noticed at first. The little things, tiny ripples on the surface of her perfect life, seemed harmless when they began. Emily and David had always gotten along, but suddenly their conversations stretched a little longer than usual. What once were casual exchanges over dinner became whispered jokes across the table. Laughter that Sarah couldn't quite join in on because she didn't understand the punchline. At first, she smiled, grateful they were so comfortable with each other. But somewhere deep in her chest, a strange uneasiness stirred. It wasn't only the jokes. Sometimes, she'd catch Emily looking at David with a softness that seemed unusual, an expression Sarah had only ever noticed when Emily talked about her crushes in the past. David, too, seemed to linger in conversations with her, his eyes holding just a little too long, his smile a shade warmer. Sarah told herself she was imagining it. After all, this was Emily, her best friend, her sister in everything but blood. Why would she even think of doubting her? Still, the unease grew. Sarah started noticing that when Emily came over, David would put his phone away immediately, as if to give his full attention. When Sarah entered the room unexpectedly, the air felt heavier, charged, like something had just been interrupted. Once, she walked in on them sitting too close on the couch, their heads bent together as they laughed over something on David's phone. They sprang apart the moment she entered, smiling too quickly, as though nothing had happened. Sarah laughed it off with them, but later that night, lying awake in bed, she replayed the scene in her mind until it gnawed at her. Emily also began to show up more often. She dropped by unannounced on weeknights, insisting she just wanted company. At first, Sarah welcomed it. She had always loved Emily's presence, but soon she realized Emily came more when David was home than when he wasn't. And oddly enough, Emily would sometimes ask where David was before even asking about Sarah. One Saturday afternoon, Sarah went into the kitchen to get drinks, leaving David and Emily in the living room. When she returned, they abruptly stopped talking. The silence was awkward, their faces guilty in a way Sarah couldn't quite explain. Her heart thudded painfully, but when she asked what they'd been discussing, they both laughed it off, saying it was nothing important. Sarah wanted to believe them. She told herself she was being paranoid, insecure for no reason. She had always trusted David, always trusted Emily. But the laughter that used to bring her comfort now sounded different, edged with something secretive. The glances they exchanged carried a weight she couldn't define. Something was shifting in the balance she thought was unshakable. And though she tried to ignore it, deep down, Sarah knew the truth. A storm was brewing in the heart of her perfect life, and soon, it would break everything apart. The uneasy feelings Sarah had tried to ignore soon became impossible to brush aside. What had once been subtle moments now grew into undeniable patterns. Emily's visits became more frequent, almost calculated. She would arrive just before David returned from work, claiming it was coincidence, but Sarah began to notice how often it happened. Even when Sarah wasn't home, Emily somehow always seemed to find her way into the house, sometimes with the excuse of dropping something off, other times insisting she just needed to talk. Then came the late-night messages. At first, Sarah didn't think much of it when David's phone buzzed after midnight. He worked long hours and sometimes colleagues reached out. But when the name Emily flashed across the screen more than once, Sarah's heart sank. The first time, she convinced herself it was harmless. They were close after all. Maybe Emily needed advice or comfort. But the second and third times left Sarah lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why her best friend needed her husband in the dead of night. She began to notice how distant David grew with her. He no longer lingered at the breakfast table the way he used to, no longer asked about her day with the same eagerness. Conversations became shorter, colder. He spent more time scrolling on his phone, sometimes turning the screen away when she walked by. It was a slow, aching withdrawal, and Sarah felt the gap widening between them with every passing day. One evening, Sarah reached for David's jacket to hang it up, and a folded note slipped out of the pocket. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it, her heart racing before she even read the words. Inside, in Emily's handwriting, were just a few lines. Last night was unforgettable. I can't stop thinking about you. Her knees nearly gave out. The room spun, and she clutched the note like it was burning her fingers. 1,000 memories rushed through her mind. Every laugh, every secret, every moment of trust she had shared with Emily. Her stomach churned at the thought of betrayal blooming in the shadows of her home. But even then, Sarah wanted to deny it. She folded the note back and slipped it where she found it, as if putting it away would erase the truth. She told herself it could mean anything, that she was jumping to conclusions. Yet in her heart she knew. It wasn't paranoia anymore, it was evidence. Still, she stayed silent. She watched them more closely, testing her instincts. And what she saw confirmed her fears. The way Emily's hand brushed David's arm too casually, the way David's eyes followed Emily when she left the room, the way their voices hushed when Sarah walked in. The seeds of betrayal had been planted, and though Sarah wanted desperately to pull them out before they grew, it was too late. The roots were already spreading through her marriage, twisting and tightening until she could no longer breathe. Sarah's silence could only hold for so long. The weight of suspicion pressed on her chest day and night, eating away at her peace of mind. Every smile from David felt forced, every word from Emily laced with poison. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but fear kept her trapped. Fear of being right. Fear of losing everything. The breaking point came on a rainy Saturday afternoon. Sarah had been cleaning the living room when she realized David's phone was left on the couch. It buzzed once, then again. Her eyes lingered on the screen, torn between trust and truth. The name Emily flashed boldly. Against her better judgment, Sarah picked it up. What she read shattered her. I can't wait to see you again. Last night was worth the risk. I love you. Her vision blurred with tears. Her hands shook so violently she nearly dropped the phone. In that moment, the fragile dam she had built inside her broke wide open. All the denial, all the excuses, all the desperate attempts to cling to hope dissolved into pure devastation. When David walked into the room moments later, Sarah was still holding the phone, her face pale, her body trembling. Their eyes met, and he froze. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was heavier than thunder. Finally, Sarah's voice cracked. How long? David's lips parted, but no words came out. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing like a trapped animal. His silence was the loudest confession she had ever heard. Emily? She choked out, tears streaming down her cheeks. My best friend? You chose her. David tried to reach for her, but Sarah recoiled, clutching the phone like a weapon. Don't you dare touch me, she snapped, her voice trembling with both rage and heartbreak. Do you know what you've done? You didn't just betray me. You destroyed me. For the first time, David lowered his head, shame flickering in his eyes. I didn't mean for it to happen, he whispered. It just happened. Those words cut deeper than any blade. It just happened. As if her years of love, loyalty, and sacrifice were nothing more than collateral damage to a careless mistake. Sarah's sobs filled the room, mingling with the sound of rain pounding against the windows. The confrontation didn't end with closure. It ended with a door slamming shut. Sarah locked herself in the bedroom, clutching a pillow to her chest as if it could hold her broken heart together. She cried until her throat ached, until her body shook from exhaustion. The woman she trusted most, the man she loved most. Together they had shattered her world. And in that storm of grief, Sarah realized nothing would ever be the same again. The foundation of her marriage had crumbled. Her friendship was in ruins, and she was left standing in the wreckage, gasping for air. The breaking point had arrived, and there was no turning back. The days after the confrontation blurred into one another. Sarah felt like she was living in someone else's body, going through the motions of daily life while her soul remained hollow. She could barely look at David without feeling a fresh stab of pain. The man who once represented safety and love now felt like a stranger, an enemy hiding in plain sight. The worst part wasn't even David, it was Emily. Sarah kept replaying every memory of their friendship in her head. Sleepovers when they were teenagers, secrets shared over ice cream, tears wiped away after heartbreaks. Emily had been more than a best friend. She had been a sister, and now every single memory felt poisoned. Sarah wondered if she had been blind all along. Were there signs? The lingering glances, the too long hugs, the way Emily's laughter rang a little too brightly when David was around? Every recollection became a knife twisting deeper, carving new scars on her already broken heart. One evening, Sarah sat on the edge of the bed while David tried to explain himself. His voice was heavy, his words rehearsed. It wasn't about you, he said softly. It was, I don't know. I was lost. Emily was just what? Sarah snapped, her voice sharp and raw. Convenient? Available? Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I wouldn't care? David's shoulders slumped. I made a mistake. The words echoed through the room like a cruel joke. A mistake. That was all he called it. To Sarah, it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A choice he made again and again, knowing exactly who he was hurting. Trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. And Sarah knew hers was gone. When David reached for her hand, she pulled away. When he swore it would never happen again, she couldn't believe him. His promises sounded hollow, like fragile glass that would shatter at the slightest touch. But the betrayal didn't just steal her trust in David. It stole her trust in herself. Sarah found herself second-guessing every instinct, every decision. How could she have been so blind? How could she have let Emily so close, let her guard down so completely? She felt foolish, ashamed, and angry all at once. Nights were the hardest. Lying in bed next to David, she felt a wall between them, higher than any mountain. She would turn her back to him, tears silently soaking her pillow, while he lay awake staring at the ceiling. Words were useless now. The silence screamed louder. Sarah realized something she had never wanted to face. Once trust is shattered, love can't survive the same way. It becomes something else, fragile, bitter, heavy. And no matter how much she wanted to believe they could fix it, deep down she knew, some things can never be unbroken. The life she thought she had was gone. What remained was an illusion crumbling in her hands. Sarah had reached the point where numbness became more painful than grief. For weeks she drifted through life in a fog, caught between anger and heartbreak, unable to move forward. But as the days dragged on, one truth became clearer. She could not stay in this limbo forever. A choice had to be made. Friends and family noticed the change in her. Her sister came over one evening, finding Sarah sitting quietly at the kitchen table, staring at a cold cup of coffee. "You can't live like this," her sister said gently. "You have to decide. Either forgive him and try again or walk away. But you can't keep bleeding like this every day." The words stung, but Sarah knew they were true. The betrayal had already stolen so much from her. Her joy, her trust, her sense of security. If she let it, it would steal her future too. David, on the other hand, pleaded for another chance. He apologized over and over, promising he would cut all ties with Emily. He swore he would prove his loyalty, prove that their marriage was worth saving. His eyes brimmed with desperation every time he spoke, but Sarah could not ignore the shadow of doubt that lingered behind his words. Then there was Emily. She tried to reach out, calling, sending messages, even showing up at Sarah's doorstep once. But Sarah never answered, never opened the door. Just seeing Emily's name on her phone made her stomach twist. The pain was too raw, the wound too deep. Forgiving her felt impossible. Alone in the quiet of night, Sarah asked herself the hardest questions. Could she ever love David the same way again? Could she rebuild trust when every glance, every touch, reminded her of the betrayal? Could she carry the weight of resentment for the rest of her life? Or would it crush her completely? The choice wasn't simply about staying or leaving, it was about survival. Staying meant endless work, constant effort, and the haunting possibility that it could all happen again. Leaving meant tearing apart the life she had built, facing loneliness, and starting over with nothing but scars. One night, Sarah stood in front of the mirror, studying the tired woman staring back at her. For the first time, she saw not a victim but a survivor. She realized she deserved more than apologies and broken promises. She deserved honesty, respect, and a love that didn't come with conditions or secrets. And in that reflection, she found her answer. Sarah knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Hearts don't heal overnight, and betrayal doesn't simply fade. But the power to reclaim her life, her dignity, and her future rested in her hands. She would no longer let David or Emily decide her story. The choice was hers, and she was ready to make it. The morning Sarah finally walked away was strangely calm. There were no shouting matches, no dramatic confrontations, just a quiet certainty in her heart. She packed a small bag, took one last look at the house she had once called home, and stepped out the door. David's pleas echoed behind her, but she didn't turn back. This time, she wasn't leaving in anger. She was leaving in strength. In the weeks that followed, Sarah began to rebuild her life piece by piece. At first, the silence of her new apartment felt unbearable, like a constant reminder of all she had lost. But slowly, she learned to fill that silence with things that nourished her soul. Reading books late into the night, taking long walks at sunrise, reconnecting with family members she hadn't seen in years. She joined a support group for women who had experienced infidelity, and for the first time, she didn't feel alone. Listening to their stories, sharing her own, Sarah realized that healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about learning to live again, even with the scars. Each woman in that circle carried pain, but they also carried resilience. And Sarah found comfort in knowing she, too, could rise. As for Emily, their friendship was gone for good. The betrayal had cut too deep. Though Sarah would never forgive her, she eventually let go of the anger, understanding that holding on to hatred only chained her to the past. Emily had made her choices, and so had David. Their actions no longer defined Sarah's worth. One evening, months after leaving, Sarah sat by the window with a cup of tea. The world outside was quiet, bathed in golden light. For the first time in a long time, she felt peace. The pain hadn't disappeared, it probably never would, but it no longer consumed her. Instead, it lived in her as a reminder of what she had overcome. Moving forward didn't mean she was ready to love again. Not yet. But it meant she could breathe freely, wake up without dread, and smile without pretending. It meant she could dream about a future that was hers alone to create, untouched by betrayal. She thought about the woman she used to be, the one who had doubted herself, who had ignored her instincts, who had stayed silent even as her heart screamed. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and unafraid to demand the love and respect she deserved. Sarah's story didn't end with a reunion or a fairy tale happy ending. It ended with freedom, messy, imperfect, but real. She had survived betrayal, heartbreak, and loss. And in doing so, she discovered something far more powerful: herself. And as she closed her eyes that night, Sarah whispered to the quiet room, "I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I will never let anyone break me like that again." Her future was unwritten, but for the first time in years, she looked forward to turning the page. 64.